Hey, I'm Amy Rosenberg, your host of PR Talk, a podcast about marketing and PR produced by Veracity, a boutique marketing agency based in Portland, but we work all over the place because PR is not about connections, it's about doing it right, and that's what this podcast is about. We're sponsored by PRSA Oregon because, well, they also want to help PR people. Networking, mentorship, skill building, professional development. Check out prsaoregon.org to see how membership can help you grow and connect.
We get so many pitches that are just irrelevant.
We want ideas and we want story. We don't want press releases.
PR people are great and they plan in advance.
Well, today I have Wil Reynolds on the phone with Seer Interactive. Hi, Wil.
What's up?
How are you? Thanks for joining me. Are you in Philly right now?
Today I'm in Philly, yes.
Okay. So you have been a long-term Engage speaker, formerly known as Searchfest. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So first of all, but before we get into what you're talking about at Engage in a couple weeks, because you're headlining the whole thing, I'd like to just hear a little bit about you and Seer Interactive and what you've been up to. I honestly, I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and I have to say that it is, now this is a compliment, but it might not sound like it, but it is impressively boring. And what I mean by that is you've had your company for 17 years. So it's kind of like, what else I don't know. That's like really impressive that you had your company for 17 years. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you started it and what your company is all about?
Sure. So we're a search, we do search, social analytics, those lovely things. And what attracts me to search is, it's like when you understand that somebody's looking for an answer, I think it's a really cool job to try to figure out how do I help them to answer their question. I think that's a cool job. It's like the librarian / concierge in me just thinks that's really fun. It's a fun problem to solve. I'm pretty boring. I stay heads down. I get my work done. I like my job, and that's pretty much it. Like I put stuff out there, but I'm not too wrapped up in like a what's the word people use? Personal branding. Like I'm not a real big personal brand guy. I just kind of let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, but when you're talking about your job, quote unquote, you're kind of downplaying it a little bit because, like, how many people do you employ at Seer?
About 205.
Yeah, so it's kind of a big deal, and you're kind of the head of it. So just FYI. But so do you want to talk about how that came to be? I mean, that's a lot. And then also, I guess this is a two-part question. I mean, that's really interesting too. You're talking about solving big problems for companies through something that some people might think is kind of mundane, search. So I don't know if you want to talk about what you mean there as well.
Sure. Well, the way I started is I went to school to be a teacher, so I never wanted to be in marketing or, I never really thought of myself as building a business. And I think that's been very freeing for me because I don't put any pressure on myself because this isn't what I ever really wanted. I'm very glad I have it now. But this wasn't like my dream, And the way I started the business is I was like not able to, I asked my boss at this company I was working at when I was about 23. I'm 43 now. And I asked her if I could work through my lunch so that I could go to this volunteer assignment where I was working at a hospital, just playing with sick kids on Wednesdays from 6 to 9 p.m. And she was like, well, I don't think you can really work through your lunch. I can't give you that time right now. And I'm like, well, I can sit on my ass for an hour in the cafe at work and do nothing on my lunch break. But if I want to shorten my day by an hour and work through my lunch so I can make it to my volunteer assignment on time, we can't do that. And she was like, no, I don't think we can do that right now. So then I quit and started Seer.
Good for you. I'm so happy. That makes me really happy. I know we want to be our own boss sometimes, and sometimes you just have to start small. So what was that first job though? Was it in marketing or?
Yeah, no, my first job was in an agency in search in 99. And then after that, I went, that company went under and I went to a Fortune 500 where I got that response. And that's when I decided to leave and start my own thing. But like I had spent 18 months trying to find a job. And then that was just like, I was knocking on doors, telling people I wanted to work at their company. I was willing to commute every day to New York if I had to, from Philly. Like, I wanted to just work at a company that I wanted to work with. And, after a while of knocking on doors and doing all that I was doing to try to get a job after 18 months, and then to have your manager be like, no, we can't do that for you. That was the catalyst for me starting the business. I'm definitely not one of those, like, I had to work for myself kind of people. It was more like I had to build this company out of the necessity of no one was willing to hire me at the time, combined with I was really unhappy with where I was.
And then did you kind of take some what you would call freelance positions and then it just built from there?
Exactly. I knew I never wanted to be a solo contractor because I just don't enjoy winning by myself. I like to have a team around. I like to feel like, the things, like, I like to have this feeling that my idea on its own would not have been as good as our idea together. And I really love that, like, blending of different people's ideas to make an ultimate outcome that neither one of us could have probably built on our own.
Yeah. So then do you do that today? Because I was looking at your website and I see that you guys have these labs where you kind of, it's like, okay, yeah, we do some search here, but like, what else do we do? And that, to do something well, so we do PR, but to do it well, we need to add in a lot of different things and talk about a lot of different things. And so is that kind of what you're doing with your team, is exploring different topics and expanding on them?
Yeah, because a lot of times what I find is that there's a lot of. So one of my good friends, he said the biggest problem with search data is it got in the hands of search people. And
Okay, what does that mean?
when he said that, I was like, he was so right, because there's so much. Search data tells you so much about your brand. What words are people using around your brand that helps you to understand how people are perceiving your brand, what competitors they're comparing you to. There's so much information in those search terms, right? And there are things that we type into Google that we wouldn't even tell our significant others. So, like, Google has this customer insight that could help you build new products. It could help you better understand customer experience and what kind of questions they're asking and what they're dealing with. There's so much information there, but most people don't tend to extract it. So what I like to do is think of Google as an intent engine, and how does that help me to better understand the intents of my customers?
Okay. Yeah. So I think you were speaking about that when I saw you at Swivel in Bend. And so
Yes.
it's, yeah. So it's like you're starting with the data and you're using that as a snapshot, a large picture actually, into more than just the data. And so in a way you could say, I mean, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, that Seer is more than just a search firm, possibly extending into branding and whatnot.
Yeah, I think that we kind of like to build the engine that creates tentacles that other types of marketing can take advantage of if they're willing to invite us in.
So
Um,
then I saw that, and I'm just really curious because I saw your lab where you're talking about partnering with other agencies. Because I think PR people could, I think so PR people, we have a hard time showing our value because if we're not getting online coverage, and let's say I get a piece in Vogue and it's just print, that's worth a lot. And it's actually worth more than buying it. But how do I show that the sales actually resulted from this piece in Vogue? Well, I don't know. Maybe the answer is working with your search firm. I don't know what you have to say about that.
it could be we're mostly digital, so the hard part is like valuing that offline piece might be slightly more difficult, but that's a challenge that I wake up to want to learn to solve. But online, at least, uh, if I was in PR, what I would be saying is, hey, client, I looked at all your paid data. I took all those search terms and I have all the conversions you got from that paid data. No big deal. And then I'm going to look at all the sites that rank for these keywords that are driving valuable outcomes for you, right? Like customer signups, leads. And then I'm going to see, of all those domains that are showing up for all these keywords that are driving you conversions, which ones are influenceable by PR. Oh, well, did you know that TechCrunch, for instance, ranks for these 15 or 20 or 50 words, with an article about something that you do, but your business actually isn't mentioned. But yet, when I look at your paid side, those 50 keywords drove you 500 leads last year. So I, as a PR person, am now going to try to get you on that TechCrunch article because it ranks for all these keywords, which instantly gets you exposure. And then when we get listed there, I'll be able to track how many people are clicking over to us as a result, which will then help me to understand what the value of being listed on that site is.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That actually helps. So you're starting with some of the data to before you work, actually. So before you start doing the actual work, you look at the data and think about, okay, how's this going to affect my strategy and my plan?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the most interesting thing about doing something for 21 years and then having me kind of pivot into this like data kind of focus is how little I realized more than ever how little I knew, in spite of my experience. And, people fly you all over the world to speak at their conferences. And, I think the hardest thing is people like me tend to not really like data because it can very often invalidate 20 years of experience. And the dopamine hit we get in our brains that tells us why we're valuable is because all these people want to be like, oh my God, you've been doing this for 20 years. You must be so smart. And I can't tell you the amount of times that a team member with the right data and 6 months of experience can invalidate something that I felt in my gut for the last 15 years doing this every day of my life. And I think most people aren't comfortable with that. So therefore they tend to ignore it. And that's how they get disrupted.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is really great. I mean, this is the talk that some of us need as PR people because we think we know what we're doing, but you know what? We don't know what we don't know. So sometimes
Bingo.
we need to stop and look around and see what's happening. But I just want to ask you what you mean by now you said you're just working more on data, like your job is rolled into data, and you are the founder, so you're the voice of the company, maybe, and then you're also now working on data. What do you mean by that?
Our company president, Crystal O'Neill, she runs the business. So I don't really have to run the day to day, nor should I, because it's not something I'm good at. So my real focus these days is like, how can I bring together data in one place so I can answer my clients' questions with a speed and an accuracy that before I would have relied on my experience with. I'm trying to beat best practices out of our organization. Like,
Okay.
I want to get the data and make it available to my teams in a way where when they want to rely on best practice. So whenever an article gets written up that says, hey, Google launched this change to the search results, and I watch the entire industry talk about it, I want to have my data in a position to where I can query my data and say, oh, yesterday over today, these are the clients most impacted by it. These clients aren't impacted at all. But if you just read the best practice, you would have run off and started changing your strategy because of something Google changed yesterday with no idea as to whether or not it actually affects your industry or your company specifically.
And then when you're talking about working with data with speed, it makes me wonder if you are creating a product or something that your clients can access their data in real time.
So we are working on a product now, a small little thing, and I'm learning a lot about how little I know about selling products. So I need to stay in my swim lane. For right now, what we're doing is we're trying to make sure that our team members, because like data is very powerful, but also if you don't know what you're looking at or how to manipulate it, you can come up with very wrong conclusions, and then you're scaling bad conclusions. So right now, this is a tool that mostly our team members are using on the behalf of their clients today, because I'm watching clients have a hard time grasping exactly what we're doing because it's somewhat complex. So I don't feel like I want to put it in their hands just yet, because we have to figure out how to better explain exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it before we could ever turn it over to somebody else.
Yeah, but at some point, this is going to be great if a recession happens because we that might affect budgets, and if we have the data, and if you're already working on it ahead of time, then that's just better.
I can't wait.
You can't wait for the recession?
I can't wait because I've built a tool. So, for instance, the one piece of software that we've built and we're trying to take to market slowly is a tool that kind of instantly scans paid search accounts, and it finds inefficiency and waste really, really, really quickly. So the other day, I maybe spent 3 hours for a client on their project, and I found $550,000 that is basically showing up for keywords that I don't think they really want to show up for them. And that's like a $500,000 found in 3 hours. So the problem right now is money's cheap. So marketers are being told, just go grow and I'll get you more money. The minute they're told grow, but I have no more money to give you, then they're going to have to get really efficient. And when it comes time to get really efficient with those spends, I think that Seer is going to be uniquely positioned to be ready to go for every company out there that needs to somehow be much more efficient in their spend, and they can't afford to waste those dollars anymore on those clicks that they didn't want.
Okay. And now, in the last 10 minutes I have with you, I'm just going to switch gears over to Engage and ask you if you even know what you're going to talk about yet, because I know sometimes we wait till the last minute.
Oh, I know what I'm going to talk about generally, but I find insights every day because I can hypothesis test so fast. So I think what happens when you have that much data, it's like I really don't know until about 3 or 2 days before exactly everything that's going to be on my slide deck.
Oh, yeah. But what's your general topic?
We're basically going to talk about what we talked about so far, which is how to use massive data at scale to better optimize all parts of your business. It's this concept of SEO data should not be sitting, or search data should not be sitting with search people. It needs to be sitting with PR people, CFOs, all these different people. I'm finding ways to use them. So I'm trying to speak about how, by getting stronger with the data, you will enable yourself to be at the center of the org instead of on the outside. I'm going to touch a little bit on something that I'm seeing across the industry around the role of the CMO and how that role is very under attack right now. And it's because CMOs aren't real good at data. CMOs aren't real good at answering questions. If you're a CEO and you're driving into work and you see a billboard, in theory, you'd like to be able to go to your CMO and say, hey, what's the value of that? Because if you were to do that to your CFO, they're going to open QuickBooks and tell you, oh, what's the cost of this floor in my building for us to take over another floor? You will have an answer pretty much instantly. A CMO is going to talk to you, well, we put it up and it's going to take 3 months and it's going to take this. And I think all CFOs and CEOs are hearing is like excuses, excuses, excuses. And this is why CMOs are the first people to be fired in the C-suite. So they have the shortest tenure and they get paid the least of everybody else in the C-suite. And I think it's because they don't bring the data and the accuracy that other folks at the C-level do. So we're going to talk a lot about what I'm seeing there and why I'm trying to empower our CMOs that we work with and our VPs of digital to have these answers at their fingertips that their CMOs and CEOs are asking.
Okay. Well, that would be very helpful for people. So it just sounds like, yeah, for me, sometimes CMOs, you don't even realize that that's a real job. I mean, sometimes, you see this CMO title and you're kind of wondering, like, what is that? Like, do you work with a lot of CMOs?
We do, but the role is starting to go away. It's interesting when you start looking at some companies, a lot of companies are experimenting with getting rid of the CMO. And it's documented. So, I don't see people saying, what, I don't think we need a CFO. I'm not seeing that article come out anywhere. Right. I am seeing tons of articles that are saying we're questioning the value of having a CMO. We're going to try to divide that role up into things. And those articles are coming out every freaking day.
Yeah, that's actually frightening because that to me is a trend about maybe marketing going away. So if somebody's not running the marketing, what's going to happen to the marketing?
What I'm seeing CMOs get replaced by chief growth officers.
Okay, so then it all switches, well, maybe to sales. Who knows?
Well, a chief growth officer, from my perspective, typically they're the kind of people that you can't really bullshit when you start talking about data. So what I'm seeing from these chief growth officers, are people who understand data in a way that when the agency says something or somebody says something, they can call them out versus being in the position of saying, well, I guess I got to believe them, right? They're saying, well, in theory, if you get this data from this API and join it to that data, then I could get that answer. Why are you telling me that I can't? Right? So like think about what's going to be interesting is, you're going to see people from different disciplines talking about their experience on stage, right? At the companies they're at or what they've seen. And I want you to be thinking, how much of that is somebody talking about something that they've done on 1 or 2 or 3 websites? And not every website fits that. So if you were to make a recommendation as a CMO that, oh, we need to improve page speed, because that's what people are saying is important. But if you don't think, well, how am I going to download the page speed of all of my pages and all the pages of my top ranked competitors and run them through an API to find out if that page speed thing affects me specifically, you're going to be out of a job someday. And somebody who does think that way will, because once you take dev resources off of a project to speed up your website, and then you find out that that doesn't move your marketing goals because you didn't know how to pull the data to answer that question, you're gone.
Yeah, but the one thing I'm kind of stuck on is, so I don't want to say that everybody at Engage is search. It's a wide mix of people, but for the most part, it's search people. And so your topic is telling search people that they shouldn't own the data, which sounds good in theory, because I get what you're saying, but people are very possessive of their work. And so if data is their work, it's just going to be interesting to hear. I'm sure that you'll message it differently than I am, but it'll be interesting to get the gut reaction of the SEO people in the room at Engage.
Yeah, it will be. Here's the thing. People don't like my message because it invalidates the thing that makes them feel valuable.
Yeah, because people are they take ownership of the work, but at the end of the day, we're a team. So
think about it, right? Like we put our big company names next to our name to say, oh, I work at this company, so I must know what I'm doing and I have experience. And then what I talk about is, yeah, I thought the same thing until I started getting good at data. And then I realized how wrong I was. With 21 years of experience doing this every day of my life, I realized how many times I was wrong, or how many times something worked for 80% of my clients, but it's a fucking shame if you're in the 20% and I told you to do something that works 8 out of 10 times and you go and trust me and you go and do that thing and you invest in that thing and it doesn't move the needle for you. That's a failure on my part. That's a failure of my fiduciary responsibility. But the problem is most of us have never found a way to not have to rely on our experience. And that's what I'm going to be making the case for is get your data right, because when your data's right, you get to make fewer wrong guesses, right? You rely less on your experience and you use your experience to offset the data and to augment it. But I watch people make shit up and get on stage all the time and talk about their experience. And I literally can query my data warehouse and be like, that's not true for 90% of my clients. But because you only work on one website, it was true for yours. So now I'm watching a whole audience of people starting to take that person's advice because they're like, they must be good. Like, look at what they're showing. Look how compelling the information is that they're showing. But those clients then have no capability to actually determine, before I make those investments, is that actually happening to my business or not? They have no idea.
Yeah, I'm finding that even in the PR world. I went to a conference and, somebody was talking about all these really cool clients, like big name clients, like that you would know what it is, and it's like, I don't have that cool of clients. And so whatever you're talking about doing, we can't do. And so, what he did was he took the negative comments from the reviews of his presentation, and now he's addressing that in a presentation to talk about how to make a uncool client cool through PR. So in a way, it's like thinking that what you're talking about doing is what he realizes that maybe he should have done in the beginning is think about everybody, and not all client is the same.
What's interesting is one of the things that people say about my presentations is they're like, well, what about people who don't have, because a lot of it hinges on paid data, because you're paying for each click. So I can understand how you value that click, right? So some people will say, well, if I don't do any PPC, then I can't do a lot of what you're talking about, Wil. And I go, all right, true. Well, then what you need to then do, in my opinion, is I would try to learn how to convince my organization that I should run paid to test and get data to understand where to deploy those more expensive resources. I may not need to keep paid up for years to get this information, but it's probably a good idea for me to do paid for some amount of time so I can get all that information very quickly, because every time you get a click, Google has to report on it. And then once I get that information, now how do I do my job better for more long-term efforts that I'm going to do? So we'll see. I mean, I definitely get some pushback on that, but I literally just don't even know how to do my job without having some level of data at that level to be able to point me in the right direction. Or for a client, I'll just say, okay, well, if we don't have this data, I'm relying on my experience, and let me show you how often I've been wrong. So are you sure you don't want to invest 5 or 10 grand in a paid for the next 2 or 3 months for us to get that data quickly? And I could just go on my experience, and if I'm wrong, then you might have used, hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of internal resource time on something that may not work. And if you're okay with that, I'm okay with that. You're the client. But it's like, if you would rather invest $10,000 to keep you from making a $100,000 mistake, then I think I owe it to you to try to at least have that conversation first before I decide that I'm just going to move on with what I have.
So, well, I really appreciate you speaking with me, and we'll just have to see you at Engage, right, in a couple weeks.
It will be a heck of a lot of fun. Hopefully it'll be, my hope is that I put things to people in a way that makes them think a little bit differently, and that thinking leads to eventual change in terms of the work that we do every day for our clients.
Yeah, because we can always get better, no matter how great we are.
Yeah, if you're not trying to get better, then you're okay being the same. And I just don't know how to wake up and be the same guy I was yesterday every day and be okay with that.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You got it.
Okay. See you soon. Bye.
Yeah.
So if you had to pick between a show or an event that had PR and one that didn't, and it was the exact event, would you go with the PR?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's good to hear.
I'm good
That's
for
all we need. All
ourselves.
right, we can go. We just need to validate.